I was sitting alone in my apartment, staring at an empty champagne bottle that should have been opened with someone else, listening to the hum of the fridge fill a silence that felt too loud for a Saturday night. It was our anniversary. 2 years. Not a casual date. Not something you forget unless it never mattered to you in the first place. I had planned everything weeks ago. The restaurant where we'd had our first real conversation. The gift I'd saved for quietly, cutting back on things I didn't need because this felt important. I didn't remind him obsessively. I didn't nag. I trusted that he knew. That afternoon, I texted him something simple. Can't wait for tonight. His reply came a few minutes later. Tonight? What's tonight? My chest tightened. I reminded him. Our anniversary. The dinner I'd mentioned more than once. The reservation he'd nodded along to last month. There was a pause, then, oh, I forgot. I already told the guys I'd go out with them tonight. We can celebrate tomorrow instead. Same thing. Same thing. No apology, no scramble to fix it. Just a statement. Confident, settled, like the decision had already been made and my feelings were an afterthought. I stared at the screen, feeling that familiar instinct to smooth things over rise up in me. Of course, I typed. Have fun. My hands started shaking only after I hit send. I stood there for a long time afterward, holding the small velvet box that had cost me months of saving, wondering when I'd started shrinking myself to avoid being difficult. Then my phone buzzed again. An Instagram notification. His stepbrother, Kyle, someone who had always treated me with quiet respect, had liked my earlier post about the coffee takeaway and anniversary card I'd sent to my partner's office. He left a kind comment. Nothing dramatic, just genuine. And suddenly, a thought formed that I hadn't planned but couldn't ignore. Why was I canceling myself for someone who didn't even pause for me? I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a scene. I just didn't want to spend my anniversary alone pretending it didn't hurt. So I didn't change my plans. I kept the reservation. I kept the evening. I refused to disappear to make his life easier. I had no idea that choice would unravel everything. His image, his family dynamics, his sense of control. All I knew was this. If someone treats your love like it's optional, they shouldn't be shocked when you stop accommodating them. I met him 2 years ago in the most unremarkable way, which somehow made it feel more real at the time. No dramatic spark, no instant fireworks, just a slow, comfortable beginning that convinced me this was something stable. He was charming without trying, confident in a way that felt effortless, not loud. He knew how to talk to people, how to be liked. When we started dating, he was attentive in the beginning, texting first, making plans, showing up when he said he would. I remember thinking how easy it felt to be chosen. That ease became the foundation I trusted. We settled into a rhythm quickly. Weeknight dinners, inside jokes, lazy Sundays. I was the planner between us, but I didn't resent it then. I told myself it was just how I loved, by remembering things, by preparing, by caring out loud. He appreciated it, at least that's what he said. You're so good at this stuff, he'd tell me. I don't know how you keep track of everything. I took that as a compliment, not a warning. Over time, I became the one who remembered dates, birthdays, deadlines. I reminded him when his dad's anniversary was coming up, helped him pick gifts for family holidays, even nudged him about things he claimed he just wasn't good at remembering. He never asked outright. He just let me fill in the gaps. His family dynamic was complicated. His dad had remarried years before I met him. His stepbrother was a few years younger, quieter, observant, not the type to dominate a room. The contrast between them was obvious. Where my partner liked attention and validation, his stepbrother seemed content staying in the background. From the beginning, his stepbrother was kind to me in a way that didn't feel performative. He remembered small details, asked about my work, checked in when my mom had surgery, never crossed a line, never inserted himself into our relationship. My partner, on the other hand, barely noticed those things. If his stepbrother remembered my birthday before he did, it was brushed off as coincidence. If he forgot to ask how my day went, it was because he was busy. There was always a reason, always an explanation that made me feel unreasonable for expecting more. Still, we lasted. 2 years is a long time to build habits, to build assumptions, to believe that shared history equals shared priorities. Our first anniversary had been modest but sweet. Dinner, a card, a promise that we'd do something big next year. I believed him. I held on to that idea longer than I should have. As our second anniversary approached, I didn't make a spectacle of it. I didn't drop hints every day. I mentioned the reservation once, maybe twice. He acknowledged it, nodded, said, yeah, I know. So I assumed he did. That assumption was my mistake. Because when someone shows you, repeatedly, that they rely on you to carry the emotional weight, they aren't forgetting. They're outsourcing responsibility. And I didn't see it clearly until the night he treated our anniversary like an inconvenience. Until the plans I'd built quietly became optional. Until I realized that the version of him I'd fallen in love with was someone I'd been compensating for all along. And that realization made what happened next hurt so much more, because it wasn't sudden. It was earned. Looking back, the signs were always there. Not dramatic red flags, nothing that would have made friends pull me aside or told me to run. Just small, dismissible moments that were easy to explain away if you wanted the relationship to work badly enough. He didn't forget everything, just the things that mattered to me. He remembered the nights out with his friends, the gym schedule, game releases, birthdays that benefited him socially, but emotional dates, ours, required reminders. And when I reminded him, he'd laugh it off. You know I'm bad with dates, he'd say. You're better at that stuff. I let that sentence become normal. Anytime I brought up feeling sidelined, he reframed it as me being too sensitive, not cruelly, casually, like it was an objective truth. You're reading too much into it. It's not that deep. Why are you making this a thing? Each time I backed down a little faster. His friends reinforced it without meaning to. They'd joke about how organized I was, how lucky he was to have someone keeping his life together. He never corrected them, never said, she shouldn't have to. He just smiled. His stepbrother noticed, though. There were moments, quiet ones, where he'd check in without making it obvious, asking if I was okay after my partner blew off dinner plans last minute, saying things like, you didn't deserve that, when my partner brushed off something important. It never felt inappropriate. It felt grounding. Like someone acknowledging reality when I was constantly being told I was exaggerating it. As our second anniversary got closer, I found myself doing what I always did, compensating. I planned early. I made sure everything was paid for, confirmed, and simple. No room for confusion, no excuse. When I mentioned the reservation a month before, he nodded while scrolling on his phone. Yeah, I know, he said. When I mentioned it again 2 weeks later, he smiled. Relax, I got it. So I relaxed. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't remind him the week of. I wanted to believe that after 2 years, I didn't have to manage my own anniversary like a project deadline. The day before, I even arranged for the coffee from his favorite place to be delivered to his office. Something thoughtful, something visible. I told myself it would make the night feel special for both of us. I posted a photo of the coffee and noted card. Nothing flashy, just a quiet moment of happiness. His stepbrother Kyle liked it almost immediately, commented something kind. My partner didn't acknowledge it at all. That should have been my answer. But I was still operating under the assumption that effort would eventually be met with effort. That if I showed him how important this was, he'd rise to it. Instead, he made plans with his friends. He didn't check the date. He didn't double-check with me. He committed to something else and assumed I'd adapt like I always did. So when his text came, casual, unbothered, confident, it wasn't shocking. It was confirming. The conflict didn't start the night he forgot our anniversary. It started long before that, in all the moments where I made myself smaller so he wouldn't feel inconvenienced. And by the time I realized it, the pattern was already set. All that was left was the moment where it finally collided with consequences. I woke up to my phone vibrating nonstop on the nightstand. Not ringing, vibrating, over and over again, like it didn't even have the patience to make sound anymore. When I finally picked it up, the screen was full. Missed calls, messages stacked so tightly they blurred together. His name filling the screen in a way that felt almost aggressive. What the hell is going on? Why is my stepbrother wearing that watch? Why is everyone tagging me? Answer your phone. Now. I didn't answer. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, letting the weight of the night before settle properly. The calm dinner, the easy conversation, the absence of tension I hadn't even realized I'd been living with. Then the pounding started. Not a polite knock, not hesitation, just sharp, impatient blows against my door. I opened it to find him standing there in yesterday's clothes, hair rumpled, jaw tight. His eyes weren't red from sadness. They were sharp with anger and panic, the kind that comes from losing control of a story you thought you owned. What the hell were you thinking? He snapped, pushing past me before I could say anything. Good morning, I said evenly. Don't do that, he shot back. Don't act like this is normal. You forgot our anniversary, I replied. This is the consequence of that. That's not the point, he said immediately. You and him went to our restaurant. You gave him my watch. I crossed my arms. You weren't there to receive it. He scoffed and started pacing, running a hand through his hair like the movement might burn off the rage. I told you we could celebrate another day, he said. You didn't have to turn this into a public thing. I didn't make it public, I said. I went to dinner. You knew exactly how it would look, he snapped. Everyone thinks something's going on between you two. Maybe they're wondering why you weren't with your girlfriend on your anniversary. That's different. How? I had plans. You had a choice. He stopped pacing and turned on me. You're overreacting. There it was, the line he always used, the one that ended conversations instead of resolving them. You didn't even mention the coffee, I said quietly, the one I sent you yesterday, with the note. His mouth tightened. I saw it, he said after a beat. So you knew what day it was? I knew, he admitted. I just didn't think it was a big deal. That landed harder than anything else he'd said. It was a big deal to me, I replied. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen and cursed under his breath. My dad, he muttered, answering and turning away slightly, but not far enough. I could hear the raised voice on the other end, not yelling. Worse, disappointed, asking questions he clearly didn't want to answer. When he hung up, his face was flushed. You've turned my family against me, he said, like it was an accusation. I didn't say a word, I replied. I didn't need to. That watch was mine, he said, voice rising again. You had no right to give it away. It was an anniversary gift, I said, for someone who showed up. You did that to hurt me. I did it because I refused to sit alone pretending this didn't matter. He laughed, sharp and humorless. So what, now you're punishing me? No, I said. I'm stopping myself from doing it. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. You need to fix this, he said. Tell people it was a misunderstanding. Make him take the post down. Get the watch back. No. He froze. What? I'm not cleaning up after you anymore. I'm your boyfriend, he snapped. Are you? I asked. Because boyfriends remember anniversaries. Boyfriends don't lie about why they cancel. I didn't lie. Ben's birthday isn't for 2 weeks, I said calmly. You already bought him a gift. You showed it to me. His face went red. He stopped himself, changed tactics. You spied on me. I remembered, I said, because I listen when you talk. His phone rang again. This time he answered immediately. I could hear Ben's voice through the speaker, incredulous. Dude, Kyle's friend just sent me that post. You really ditched your girlfriend and let her and your stepbrother have dinner together on your anniversary? He hung up and stared at me like this was somehow my fault. You humiliated me, he said. No one's laughing, I replied. They're just asking questions. Same thing. It's really not. He stormed around the apartment, ranting about embarrassment, betrayal, how I'd ruined everything. Then his eyes landed on the empty champagne bottle on the counter. You drank our anniversary champagne with him too? He demanded. No, I said. I drank it alone, Friday night, after you canceled. That seemed to make it worse. He grabbed the bottle and threw it into the trash so hard it shattered. I can't believe you, he said. I looked at him calmly. I can't believe you forgot. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, uncomfortable. Finally, he shook his head. You're blowing this out of proportion. I took a slow breath. You made our anniversary optional. The rest just happened. He stared at me like he was waiting for me to take it back. I didn't. And that was the moment he realized something had shifted, something he couldn't argue, charm, or minimize his way out of. By Monday morning, it was no longer just between us. That was the thing I hadn't anticipated. Not how angry he'd be, but how quickly the situation escaped his control. Once other people saw it, once the context existed outside of his version of events, it stopped being something he could manage with a conversation behind closed doors. He went quiet after storming out of my apartment. No texts, no calls, no half-hearted apology disguised as frustration. Just silence, the kind meant to make me uncomfortable enough to reach out first. I didn't. By lunchtime, my phone started buzzing again. This time it wasn't him. It was his stepbrother. Hey, just checking in. You okay? I stared at the message longer than necessary, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was aware of how easily things could be misinterpreted if I wasn't careful. I'm fine, I replied, just dealing with the fallout. I figured, he wrote back. He's spiraling. That didn't surprise me. What did surprise me was how fast the narrative started spreading, especially among people who already knew him well enough to recognize patterns. By early afternoon, his phone was blowing up again. I knew because he showed up at my place without warning for the second time that day. This time, he didn't shout right away. He stood in my doorway, arms crossed, jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might crack a tooth. "You enjoying this?" he asked. "Enjoying what?" I said calmly. "Everyone talking about me like I'm some kind of villain," he snapped. "My dad, my stepmom, even my stepbrother won't shut up about it." "I didn't tell anyone to talk," I said. "I didn't post anything." "That doesn't matter," he said sharply. "You let it happen." I leaned against the counter. "You forgot our anniversary. You chose a party. People noticed." "They don't know the whole story." "They know enough." That's when his phone rang again. He answered it on speaker without thinking. It was his stepmom. I didn't hear every word, but I didn't need to. Her tone said enough, measured, disappointed, clearly unimpressed by his explanations. "You knew it was your anniversary," she said. "She even sent coffee to your office, with a note. So don't tell me you forgot." He glanced at me, eyes flashing. "I didn't think it was a big deal," he muttered. "That's the problem," she replied. "You didn't think." He hung up and turned back to me, furious. "You've turned my family against me," he repeated, louder this time. "I didn't do anything," I said. "I went to dinner." "With him," he shot back. I didn't correct him immediately. I let the implication hang there, ugly and unfair. "Let's be clear," I said finally. "I didn't take anyone anywhere. You didn't show up. The reservation existed. He agreed to go with me, so I wouldn't spend the night alone." "That's not how it looks." "That's exactly how it happened." He laughed bitterly. "You're acting like you did nothing wrong." "I didn't cheat," I said. "I didn't lie. I didn't cancel on you. I kept my plans." His phone buzzed again. This time it was his dad. He hesitated before answering, but when he did, the volume was turned down just enough that I could still hear fragments. "You embarrassed yourself. She didn't force you. You made a choice." He ended the call abruptly and shoved his phone into his pocket. "Everyone's acting like I committed a crime," he said, "over one night." "One night that mattered," I replied. He stared at me, eyes hard. "So what now? You just sit back and let people think you're the victim?" "I am the one who was forgotten," I said evenly. He scoffed. "You didn't even try to stop me." "That stopped me." "I shouldn't have to stop my boyfriend from skipping our anniversary," I said. "If I do, the relationship's already broken." That's when he changed tactics. "You know this looks bad for him too," he said. "You've dragged him into our mess. My family's asking questions. People are talking." "He didn't drag himself into anything," I said. "He showed up when you didn't." "And you rewarded him with my watch." I met his gaze. I gave it to the person who respected my time. He shook his head, pacing again. "You should tell him to give it back. You should tell everyone this was a misunderstanding." "No," I said. "Why are you being so stubborn?" "Because I'm done absorbing the consequences of your choices." That was the moment his anger shifted into something else, something closer to fear. "You're really not going to fix this, are you?" he asked. "There's nothing to fix," I replied. "You made your priorities clear. I'm just not hiding them for you anymore." He stood there for a long moment, like he was waiting for me to soften. I didn't. By the end of the day, the story had fully escaped him. People weren't reacting because of the watch, or the dinner, or even his stepbrother. They were reacting because the pattern was suddenly visible. The coffee at his office, the forgotten date, the confidence with which he dismissed it, and the calm way I refused to clean up after him. By Tuesday morning, he would try a different approach. Apologies, damage control, rewriting history. But the escalation had already begun. And once other people start seeing the truth for themselves, it doesn't matter how loudly you argue. The narrative moves on without you. The worst part wasn't the noise. It was the quiet moments between it, when the phone stopped buzzing long enough for my own thoughts to catch up with me. By Tuesday morning, the story had taken on a life of its own. Not because I kept feeding it, but because he did. I stayed silent. I didn't post. I didn't clarify. I didn't defend myself. I went to work, answered emails, drank coffee that had gone cold while I stared at my screen pretending to read. People still found ways to ask, "Are you okay? Is everything really that bad? I saw something online. Do you want to talk?" I smiled. I nodded. I said I was fine. I wasn't. That afternoon, he went nuclear. I knew because my phone lit up with notifications from people who normally never messaged me. Screenshots followed. Long blocks of text. Stories posted and deleted, then reposted again as if repetition could turn accusation into truth. He framed it carefully, or at least he thought he did. He wrote about betrayal, about how blindsided he felt, about how I had manipulated the situation to make him look bad. He used words like humiliated and disrespected. He implied I'd crossed lines without ever saying which ones. What he didn't say mattered more. He didn't say he forgot our anniversary. He didn't say he chose a party over me. He didn't say I'd sent coffee to his office that morning with a note he couldn't pretend not to see. Instead, he made it about intent, about feelings, about how hurt he was. Watching him rewrite the story in real time felt like being erased while still standing there. I sat on my couch, phone in my hand, heart pounding in a way that felt disproportionate to how still my body was. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to respond, to correct, to defend. Receipts lived in my camera roll, the reservation confirmation, the delivery receipt, his texts. I didn't use them, because part of me still hoped he'd stop, that he'd realize what he was doing, that he'd choose accountability over image. He didn't. By evening, his mom called. I almost didn't answer. I knew the tone before I heard it. Concerned, measured, protective. "Hi," she said gently, like we were talking about something fragile. "I just wanted to check in." "I'm okay," I replied automatically. She sighed. "He's really struggling." There it was. Not we're struggling, not you were hurt. Him. "He didn't mean for this to get so big," she continued. "You know how he is. He reacts when he feels attacked." "I didn't attack him," I said quietly. "I know," she said, but her voice carried the unspoken but. "Still, people are talking, and I think it would help if you could de-escalate things." "How?" I asked. "Maybe ask him to take the post down, or clarify that nothing inappropriate happened. Just be the bigger person." The words landed like a weight on my chest. "So he forgets our anniversary," I said slowly. "He lies about why. He posts about me online, and your solution is for me to smooth it over." "He's young," she said. "He made a mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I replied. "It was a choice." A pause. Longer this time. "Well," she said finally, "relationships require grace." After the call ended, I sat there staring at the blank wall across from me, feeling something inside me fold in on itself. That was the dark part. Not the accusations, not the public commentary, not even his refusal to apologize. It was realizing that even now, especially now, I was expected to absorb the damage so he could stay comfortable. That if I spoke, I was dramatic. If I stayed silent, I was complicit. If I set a boundary, I was cruel. I replayed the last 2 years in my head, not as highlights, but as patterns. All the moments I'd adjusted, all the times I'd let things slide because they seemed small in isolation. I understood then why this hurt so much. It wasn't about a watch. It wasn't about dinner. It wasn't even about that one night. It was about being optional, about loving someone who treated your presence like something interchangeable, about realizing that the moment you stopped compensating, everything collapsed. I sat there with my phone face down beside me, the room quiet except for my own breathing, and thought about how easy it would be to fix this. One post, one message, one apology I didn't owe. Everything would calm down. His family would relax. The noise would fade, and I would disappear again. That was when I knew. I couldn't go back, not because I was angry, but because I finally saw the cost of staying. By the time night fell, I wasn't crying. I wasn't spiraling. I was tired. And that exhaustion, the kind that comes from carrying something too long, was what broke the last thread holding everything together. The dark moment wasn't loud. It was quiet, and it changed everything. I didn't wake up that morning angry. I woke up clear. There's a difference between reacting and deciding. Reaction is loud and messy and fueled by hurt. Decision is quiet. It comes after you've replayed everything enough times to know there's nothing left to debate. I made coffee, sat at the table, opened my phone. For the first time since this started, I wasn't reading messages to understand how he felt. I was looking at dates, timestamps, facts. I didn't need a speech. I didn't need to convince anyone of my intentions. I didn't even need to explain why I was hurt. The truth already existed. I just stopped hiding it. I opened my Instagram story, not to write a caption, not to address anyone directly. Just a clean sequence, one slide at a time. The restaurant reservation, booked 3 weeks before our anniversary. Date circled in the confirmation email. The text exchange. Me. Can't wait for tonight. Him. Tonight? Me. Our anniversary. The reservation we talked about. Him. Oh, I forgot. We can celebrate tomorrow. Same thing. The coffee delivery receipt. Time-stamped. That morning. His favorite place. The note. 2 years. Tonight. No commentary, no emojis, no accusations. Just a timeline. I posted it and put my phone down. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then my phone exploded. Calls, texts, voicemails piling up faster than I could open them. His name again and again, like repetition could undo what had already been seen. You need to take that down. What are you doing? You're making this worse. We can talk about this privately. I didn't answer, because there was nothing private left to protect. When I finally picked up, it wasn't to argue, it was to end the noise. You blindsided me, he said, voice tight, controlled in a way that told me he was barely holding it together. You didn't have to post that. I didn't add anything, I replied. I just showed what already happened. You're letting people think I'm the bad guy. There it was again. Not I hurt you, not I messed up. Just optics. You made your choice, I said calmly. I just stopped covering for it. This isn't fair, he snapped. You knew what would happen. I took a breath, not to steady myself, to choose my words. He made you choose. You chose. He just didn't think you actually would. Silence. Not the dramatic kind. The kind where there's nowhere left to go. You're really doing this, he said finally. I'm really done pretending, I replied. He hung up. Within an hour, the tone shifted. Friends who'd been neutral stopped asking questions. The messages turned from curiosity to quiet acknowledgement. No one needed a think piece. No one needed context. The timeline spoke for itself. Even his friends went silent. Ben texted me once. I didn't know the full story. I do now. That was it. His family didn't call again. Not that day. Not to ask me to smooth things over. Not to explain his behavior away. The pressure evaporated. Not because anyone suddenly sided with me, but because the argument was over. Facts have a way of doing that. He tried one last angle. A message came through late that afternoon. Longer, softer, carefully worded. I get why you're upset. I just wish you'd handled it differently. This didn't have to blow up like this. I read it once. Then I archived it. Because what he still didn't understand, what he'd never understood, was that this wasn't about how big it became. It was about how small he'd made it when it mattered. That night, I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter. The constant second-guessing was gone. The mental gymnastics. The urge to explain myself to people who benefited from my silence. Once the facts were out, there was nothing left to argue. No version he could rewrite, no misunderstanding to clarify, no emotional leverage left to pull. I hadn't won. I had stepped out of the fog. And for the first time since all of this began, I wasn't reacting to him anymore. I was moving forward without him. The aftermath wasn't loud all at once. It spread, slowly, inevitably, like something seeping into every corner, no matter how many doors you tried to shut. By the next morning, his attempt at damage control had already begun and failed. He posted a long story late that night, the kind that looked carefully written but emotionally reactive. He talked about betrayal, about how blindsided he felt, about how private issues should stay private. He implied I had crossed boundaries without ever naming what they were. He framed himself as someone who'd been publicly humiliated for making a mistake. What he didn't say was louder than anything he wrote. He didn't mention forgetting our anniversary. He didn't mention the coffee. He didn't mention choosing a party over me. People noticed. At first, the responses were cautious. Neutral emojis, generic comments. But then someone said the thing everyone else was thinking. A friend commented, "Didn't you ditch her for Ben's party, though?" The comment stayed up for less than 2 minutes before it disappeared. The friend disappeared with it, blocked. That was when the tone shifted. Screenshots started circulating. Not mine, other people's. His story. The deleted comment. The receipts I'd posted earlier that day. The narrative he was trying to sell didn't just crack. It collapsed. By noon, his phone was lighting up, not with support, but with questions he couldn't answer cleanly anymore. That afternoon, the family group chat imploded. I didn't see it happen in real time. I found out later, through screenshots sent quietly, carefully, by someone who didn't want to be dragged into the mess, but didn't want me misrepresented either. He demanded the watch back, called it stolen, threatened to handle it legally if it wasn't returned. His dad responded first. "You can't steal a gift." Then his stepmom followed. "You're embarrassing yourself." He doubled down, claimed I'd manipulated the situation, claimed his stepbrother knew exactly what he was doing by accepting it. That's when his stepbrother replied. He didn't insult him. He didn't defend me. He didn't escalate. He wrote one sentence. "I showed up. You didn't." That was it. Minutes later, he left the group chat entirely. The next move came quietly. He messaged his stepbrother privately, offered money for the watch. At first, it was reasonable, a little over what it was worth. When that didn't work, he raised the number, then raised it again. Each message more urgent than the last. His stepbrother declined each time. Politely, firmly. Not for sale. When the final offer was ignored, he blocked him. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. By midweek, he tried a different angle, image recovery. A mutual friend texted me, "Hey, he wanted me to tell you he's going on a date tonight, just so you know he's moving on." I stared at the message, more tired than anything else. "We broke up on Sunday," I replied. "He's free to do whatever he wants." The response came back almost immediately. "Wait, what? He told us you were working through things." There it was. The lie wasn't about me anymore. It was about him not wanting to be the one left. I sent screenshots, not with commentary, just facts. The reservation, the texts, the timeline. The friend replied with one word: "Wow." An hour later, my phone rang. His name. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail anyway. "You're really going to turn everyone against me?" he said, voice tight, controlled. "You're ruining my life." I listened once, then deleted it, because the truth was simpler than he wanted it to be. I wasn't turning anyone against him. I had stopped protecting him. Online, the reaction snowballed. Old posts resurfaced. Comments appeared under photos he hadn't touched in months. "Didn't you forget your anniversary, though?" Team facts. This isn't a misunderstanding if there are receipts. He tried deleting them, then turning off comments, then making his profile private. None of it worked fast enough. People had already seen enough. By Friday, the version of himself he'd been trying to maintain, the charming, misunderstood guy who just made a mistake, was gone. Not destroyed. Just unbelievable. The most telling moment came that evening. I got a message from Ben. "I didn't know he was telling people that," he wrote, "that you were still together." I didn't reply immediately. Then, I told him to stop using my name. That was it. No loyalty speech, no sides taken dramatically, just boundaries, something he'd never respected. He tried once more to reach me that night. A long message, softer this time. "I get why you're mad, I just don't think it had to go this far." I read it once, then archived it, because this was as far as it went the moment he decided our anniversary was optional. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was quiet. It was people no longer believing him by default. It was friends hesitating before backing his version. It was his family refusing to clean up his mess. He didn't lose everything. He lost control. And for someone who had relied on rewriting reality to stay comfortable, that loss hit harder than any breakup. As for me, the noise slowly faded. Not because things were resolved, but because there was nothing left to argue. I hadn't posted again. I hadn't explained myself further. I hadn't defended my choices. The facts stood where I left them, and the consequences found him without my help. The noise didn't stop all at once. It faded. One day I realized my phone hadn't buzzed in hours. Then a full afternoon passed, without a notification that made my stomach tighten. The story moved on, not because it was resolved, but because there was nothing left to debate. That was the strange part. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt quiet. A week later, a message came through from a number I didn't recognize. I knew who it was before I opened it. He said he was in therapy now, said he'd had time to reflect, said he understood that things had gotten out of hand. The apology was careful, polished, still centered on how everything had affected him. I read it once, then I put my phone down. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. Not because you're angry, but because you finally understand why you kept falling in the river. As for his stepbrother, Kyle, things didn't turn into a movie ending. There was no sudden romance, no dramatic declaration, just a few check-ins, coffee, conversations that didn't leave me feeling like I had to explain myself afterward. It wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about noticing the difference between someone who shows up and someone who assumes you will. Life went back to being ordinary in the best way. Work, friends, evenings that belonged to me again. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, stopped wondering how I could have phrased things differently to get a better outcome. Because the outcome had never depended on my phrasing. That was the lesson. Love isn't what people say when everything is easy. It's what they protect when it costs them something. If someone treats your presence like it's flexible, like it can be postponed, rescheduled, minimized, believe them the first time. Don't argue with the pattern. Don't negotiate your worth. Don't wait for clarity that's already been given to you through actions. Consequences don't care about your narrative. They don't soften because you didn't mean to hurt someone. They just arrive, quietly and fairly, when choices are made. He wanted a night out with the guys. He got it. It just cost him a relationship, a watch, and the version of the story where he was always the good guy. As for me, I didn't lose anything that was meant to stay. I gained peace, and that turned out to be worth far more than an anniversary dinner ever could have been.